Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being part of our anti-bullying discussion. It's great to be with you all here tonight. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are around the country, and also around the state of Maryland. Unfortunately, we had to reschedule this because, as you know, we were hit by a hurricane in October, and we've been able to regain all kinds of progress, and now we're happy to be here to hold this discussion. We're joined here tonight by our State Superintendent Lillian Lowry and our Assistant Superintendent for Education, Ann Chafin. I know we're also going to be joined by some experts who we will be introducing to you all later. We also have Marylanders joining us from all over the state through Google+, and thank you again for coming. You know, bullying is an issue that Martin and I have been feeling strongly about now for some time, not just as public servants, but as parents and as compassionate people. We have 4 children. We've got a 10-year-old son and a 15-year-old son, and we have 2 daughters. And we've tried to teach them different tools and different ways that they can handle whether they've been bullied themselves or whether they've seen bullying happen in their presence, and what they can do to be advocates to help kids who really need other kids to stand up against it. But this is something that every caring parent can relate to. It breaks your heart when you hear your child come home with a story about a bullying incident that they've observed, or even if it's something that's happened to them. That's why in Maryland we've worked hard in a number of years to pass meaningful anti-bullying laws, which have been called one of the most aggressive anti-bullying laws in the country. Our laws right now ensure that our public schools have a policy in place that prohibits bullying, harassment, and intimidation. But even with strong policies, we all know that there's still way too many kids out there that are having incidents occur. And you can have laws on the books, but that doesn't necessarily mean those laws are going to protect kids. So we need to find other ways and have a discussion about that here tonight. That's why we've taken sort of a hands-on approach, if you will, to improve and digitize our reporting systems, educate our students, parents, and administrators, and taken action in our communities around the state to prevent bullying. We've also joined together with Facebook and Time Warner's Cartoon Network. And as you all know, if you've got kids, every kid is on Facebook. So it's been a pretty impressive way that we've joined with Time Warner and Facebook to get children, to get adults, to get teachers and administrators to take a pledge against bullying. And they go online to do that. And we've really found that to be a nice, effective tool. We're also partnering with one of our favorite ravens, Ray Rice. He has done a lot to increase the public awareness on this issue, and has been very, very vocal in the community to try and get kids to realize how much they need to stand up and help prevent this from happening to kids in their presence. It's all about these partnerships that we're making, working with our kids, the community leaders, and with parents and teachers, and that's how hopefully we'll be able to make some progress together. And by standing up against hatred, fear, and insecurity, and reaching out to those whose lives have been affected by bullying, together we can work towards a better, more inclusive, more compassionate future for our kids. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce our Assistant Superintendent to our State Department of Education, Ms. Ann Chafin.
Thank you very much. As Judge O'Malley has said, ending bullying is work that's going to take each and every one of us. It's not just work for schools and school systems, but work that has to be accomplished by parents, religious organizations, and community groups. Our school systems have been working to reduce and eliminate bullying in many ways. The Safe Schools Reporting Act of 2005 went into effect for the 2005-2006 school year. That law required that county boards of education report incidents of bullying and harassment to MSDE each year, and that we in turn provide a report to the General Assembly annually, district by district, to explain the number of these forms that are filed and resolved. The model policies are also in place that prohibit bullying, harassment, and intimidation. It's not just the policies, which are extremely important and that need to be that are in place in each of the 24 school systems, but it's also the support and the programming and prevention work that's going on in the schools for students, staff, parents, and volunteers. We've seen an increase in the number of reports in the school systems pertaining to bullying and harassment, and we actually consider this a positive occurrence. The more people are recognizing it, the more easily we can do something about it. Maryland's model policy to address bullying was given an A++ rating, the highest, by Bully Police, an organization that monitors anti-bullying legislation and policies in all 50 states. Maryland is putting themselves out front to do what's best for kids and for families. With that, I take pleasure in introducing to you Dr. Lillian Lowry, our state superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. I'm relatively new in my position as state superintendent, so I begin by extending my sincere appreciation to Maryland's First Lady, Judge Katie O'Malley, who has taken on bullying as a personal cause. Her work in this area has brought much needed attention to the problem and has helped galvanize public support to put an end to this problem that affects so many of our students in our classrooms. Educators, students, and parents throughout Maryland appreciate your efforts, Judge O'Malley.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we're now going to introduce those who are joining us via Google Meet. And we will start with Rosalind Wiseman. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Sure. I'm Rosalind Wiseman, and I work with parents and kids and teachers, administrators around the country to try and create communities of dignity and social competence for kids so they can handle bullying and reach out for help when they need it.
Thank you. Christian Hodges. Christian's not with us. We have Catherine Hyde.
Hi there, I'm Catherine Hyde. I'm with PFLAG, which is Parents, Families, Advocates, Allies for the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender community. And we understand that unfortunately many schools are still very hostile environments to our children. And we do an awful lot of work to try to make that better. I want to share just a few statistics with you. Our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender children are 2 to 3 times more likely to attempt suicide than the rest of the student population. Our transgender children, 1 in 2 of our transgender children attempt suicide before they turn 18. These are traumatic statistics for our children. 82% of our kids experience verbal harassment at school. 56% experience physical harassment or physical assault, and 60% of those never report it. So when you say reports are going up, I agree. That's a good thing. We need to know what's happening before we can address it. 85% of our kids hear gay used in a negative way at school, and what really breaks my heart is 57% of them report that they hear it from staff and administrators too, which is so sad. 63% of our kids feel unsafe at school. 80% of our transgender students feel unsafe at school. And the thing that really breaks your heart is that these kids don't always feel safe at home. When you're bullied because of race or ethnicity or religion, you go home and your parents identify with that identity for the most part. They can understand, they can comfort you, but not all of our parents, in fact, very few of them, can identify with a lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender experience. Most parents are straight. So our kids aren't always feeling safe and cherished at home. In fact, 25% of our kids who come out to their parents are kicked out of their homes for religious or moral conflicts. So making school safe for these kids is so vitally important, and we are thrilled to be working in a state that takes this seriously and is interested in support. This can be a politically fractious topic, so it's very important that we empower staff and administrators to intervene when we hear bullying based on sexual orientation or gender identity. And we're thrilled to have been part of the education effort. In 2012 alone, we provided 44 trainings across Howard and the surrounding counties, reaching 2,800 educators, staff, and students, helping them understand how to address this issue and provide, as was said, a place of dignity for our kids. So we're very excited that you're doing this, Judge O'Malley, and thrilled for all the work you've done and for our state school department. It's been fantastic. But we have much yet to do.
Oh, yes, a lot. I agree with you.
And Nancy Gifford.
Hi, thank you. My name's, as you said, Nancy Gifford. I'm the project manager for the Family Online Safety Institute. Just a little background, in previous life I was a federal prosecutor in Connecticut. I specialized in crimes against children. Came over to the Family Online Safety Institute about a year ago. We're an international nonprofit dedicated to making the world online and the online world safer for families. I was brought on as project manager to help develop the first consumer-facing website for FOSI, the Family Online Safety Institute. The website's called theplatformforgood.org, and it's a website for parents, for teachers, and for teens, helping to celebrate the many positive things that we're seeing in the online world. It's a little different than some of what we've been talking about here. Our goal, because we did see that there was a lot of information out there on bullying and on other negative behaviors, that one tactic to take would be to instead focus on the positive. It's not just a light and fluffy experience. It's based on real science. It's founded on an approach called the social norms theory, which I'm going to butcher, but what I understand it to be is people behave, and the way they behave is impacted by the way they think others behave. So in bullying, the evidence is pretty clear that only a minority of kids are engaging in bullying. It's not the majority. So the goal here is to close the gap between the perception that's reinforced, that we hear quite a bit in the media, that everyone is doing it, with the reality that it's really an aberrant behavior. And by doing this, we can help those kids who are doing the right thing feel confident that they're engaging in the right thing and doing the right thing. We can help embolden some of the bystanders and upstanders to continue to do the right thing. And we can help those who maybe are on the fringe, who engage in bullying because they think that it's what others want them to do, to understand that it's an aberrant behavior and find comfort in coming over. So what we do is we spend a lot of time talking about do's rather than don'ts, and we highlight some of the really great things people are doing in their schools and communities. And just a couple of stories, if you don't mind. One is that we've been posting both on our blog as well as on our social media pages. Include a story you all may be familiar with because it was shared on Facebook, but the story of Daniel Quee, who is a soccer player who was being bullied through his school after he missed a key goal, and all of his classmates then changed their profile picture on Facebook to be a picture of Daniel Quee, and it went viral throughout his school and through other neighboring towns where everyone put Daniel Quee's photo as their profile picture. And when he went back to school the next day, instead of feeling depressed and concerned about how people were going to respond to him because he had lost that goal, he felt emboldened and happy, and as he said, 10 feet tall. So the other types of stories we talked about are the West Brother High boys who started a Twitter account where all they do on this Twitter account is compliment their classmates. And that has been an amazing story that went viral. Now they're complimenting others. They're being followed by the governor. I think that was in Iowa City. We've had original blogs by people like Benny Krinkle, who is in Rebecca Black's video Friday, which you may remember, that went viral. She's described as the girl dancing awkwardly in the video, and she was bullied quite a bit after that video went viral because of her dancing. And she wrote a blog about being resilient, which I think is a part of the bullying conversation that we really want to highlight. We may not be able to wipe out bullying, but we can take some education and some knowledge from those kids who have been bullied and were resilient. And we really want to highlight that conversation more than some of the other negative conversations to really promote some positive parts that kids can do.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask Rosalind, as the expert in this field, what is the best piece of advice that you can give to a kid who's been bullied?
Well, I think that the most important thing I would say is if it bothers you, then it bothers you. That nobody can take away the feeling that you have because you have the right to your feelings. And, you know, people are going to say things to make you feel like there's no reason for you to feel this way, that, you know, you're being overreactive, you're being sensitive, you're being too sensitive. And I think the most important thing is to remember that it's your emotional truth and nobody can take that away from you, just like nobody can take away anybody else's. So, you know, people can differ with you on the facts of things, but they can't take away the way you feel. So I think that's one of the most important things for kids to remember. And the second thing I would say is, even though I know that we like to talk about, like, it gets better as this thing that we say to kids, it doesn't, frankly, usually make them feel better in the moment when they're really dealing with the difficult problem. And so you need to understand and really remember that conflicts are inevitable. And unfortunately, like we will, as was just said, bullying is not going to go away because people get into conflicts with each other and people abuse power. And so when you're a kid, you have to develop the skills to be able to manage that well. And that is really, really tough. And one of the things that, in addition to just, remembering your emotional truth about something, is that it's not weak to ask for help. And it's not weak to think that you have, gotten into a situation that feels over your head. And so the third thing I would say, when you are on the receiving end of this, it is, yes, of course, ask for help when you're feeling overwhelmed, but I want you to do it intelligently. I want you to do it strategically. So I want kids to think about, who is the best person in their lives that they can go to. And I would, give as a starting place somebody who's opinionated but not judgmental, is not going to make you feel stupid or weak for coming towards them or tell you what to do, if they were, thinking like, well, this is what I would do, but to allow you to think through the problem and to really come up with concrete advice. So somebody who is opinionated but not judgmental, somebody who's honest with you, and somebody who's reliable. And that is somebody that you can go to as an ally to help you think through the problem. And then based on the situation at hand, what is the most strategic way to get through this? So that maybe you don't feel, if you start out at 100% misery and you feel like you just don't even want to go to school, like the way that Nancy was talking about the kid with soccer who probably didn't want to go to school the next day, because all the stuff was in his head about it, is that you can go from 100% misery to 90% misery. And that's actually a pretty big deal, because from 100% misery, you feel like there's nothing you can do and it's totally out of your control. And we want to be able to give you some control back so that you feel like you can manage what's happening to you in a better way.
Thank you.
Catherine, how do you think our schools are doing with connecting parents with parents on this issue? And what suggestions do you have for us to maybe do a better job?
I think parents need an awful lot of education on this issue, and I think that Maryland state schools across Maryland are working very hard to do this. I think we could perhaps leverage the PTAs a little bit better to get some parental education out there. I think there's an awful lot that parents don't understand that's going on at school, and we all know as parents that our kids don't tell us everything. They don't feel like anything's going to get better, or they don't feel that they want to bring any more attention to themselves. So being sure that we open this up into a much more open environment where the parents are contributing to the understanding through the PTAs and to other parents, because very often what we find are the parents who are interested in working on this are a self-selecting group. They're the ones who are interested in working on this because they care about it, because they understand. We have a lot of parents out there who don't understand the extent of the problem, and I think we can and should leverage them more, and also to help give them support. It's very hard when our children get bullied. It's also extremely hard when our children are the bulliers. And helping parents through that, I think, is a very important part of the process. And I believe that our policy and the way our policies have been stated are starting to do that, and to have respect for just how difficult this is for parents as they step through this process. Raising kids is hard.
Nancy Gifford, would you please share, based on what we've been talking about since you gave your comments, any other additional thoughts you may have or suggestions?
Sure. I should know I'm a mom of 3 as well, and I want to just follow up a little bit on the support for being the bully as well as the victims. Some of the studies that we've been seeing, many of them actually, show that the role of bully and target of the bullying often goes back and forth, and that's especially true in the online environment. That is, you're not always the bully, that there's often a back and forth. And again, in the online environment, we're seeing that that's especially true, that you don't just bully or just be the target of bullying, that you're often, maybe you were targeted, but then you feel a little bit more emboldened from behind the screen of the computer and you can bully back. So it is incredibly important to be supporting both the bullies and the victim, and providing some comfort and competence and skills for the parents as well. I did want to talk just a little bit more about the role of the parents. That's part of what a Platform for Good is all about, is what we saw at the time that we launched a Platform for Good is this incredible amount of parent anxiety, real concern about cyberbullying, about sexting, whatever the different item may be that's in the news. And parents were also being, getting mixed messages from the media about being overly hovering, not being involved enough. And it's incredibly stressful for parents. Anytime I would be out at the playground with my kids are 11, 9, and 6, and I would mention what I do for a living, I would get a whole host of concerns that parents had, some founded, but many not, about what their fears were about the online world. So what a Platform for Good does is an attempt to both help calm parental anxiety by highlighting the positive side, but also help build confidence that they understand technology. Too often you hear parents say, oh, my kids already know more than me, and throw up their hands and walk away. We don't want that to happen. Part of the discussion we have with parents when I go to schools, we often start the conversation with parents about where their anxiety is. And I like to start using quotes from David Finkelhor, who's a researcher from the Crimes Against Children Center in New Hampshire. He has a lecture, and if you ever have time to Google it, it's if you Google David Finkelhor and Juvenoia, you'll see an hour-long video where he gives a brilliant discussion about parent anxiety. And basically what he says is, at this time in history, kids have never had it better. Their parents are spending more time with their kids than ever before. Test scores are up. Teen pregnancies down, STDs are down, criminal behavior is down by almost every metric of success. Your kids are doing okay. The only exception to that is obesity. But in almost every other statistic, they're doing okay. And I like to start with that with parents and then step back and say, okay, now let's talk about bullying. Because you got to put it in context. Overall, kids are doing okay. And parents need to be feeling a little less anxiety, and maybe we'll see less of the parents who are doing some of the disciplining that we've seen online with the shooting of the laptop. I don't know if you're familiar with that incident, but there was a dad who was upset with some of the things his daughter was posting on Facebook, and he shot her. He wrote he gave a long speech in a video, and then at the end it culminated with him shooting her laptop. And what we thought was, that's the epitome of showing parents who are anxious and they don't know what else to do, so they're going to take it out on the laptop without any concern about the fact that that daughter or son could go to the library, to school, to any other venue, and continue to have access to to Facebook and whatever platform that she's using.
But that's also
just the one last thing. The goal here is to make sure the parents feel two things. One, the ability to communicate with their kids, keeping those lines of communication open without hostility. And then the second is to help parents feel that they are able to help the kids with the resiliency and feeling confident that they can help bolster their resiliency when things do go wrong. Sorry.
Oh, that's
No,
okay. I'm sorry I interrupted. I wanted to say just that shooting the laptop is such an aggressive act that it's kind of scary, and it's bullying kind of in and of itself.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to go back to something you had said earlier about, your whole platform holding up what works and the positive things. One of the things we share with educators when we train them is how powerful every teacher and every staff person is for these kids. Our kids will tell us time and time again that one teacher stood up for them, and that gave them the wind beneath their wings to get back to school the next day, to have the courage to smile, to take on the world. It really only takes one or two in every school to really make our kids feel cherished and safer. So it's just, just holding up what works. Just stand up for these kids. Don't tolerate inappropriate comments in your classroom, and make it clear. And that's such a huge difference you can make.
Well, that's a really good point that you bring up about one or two teachers standing up, and that's sort of the message or the culture that I'd like to see with the children as well, because I think just like having one or two teachers stand up, if you have, and I say this to high school kids when I talk to them all the time, say, if you see somebody sitting by themselves in the lunchroom, or if you see somebody that's looking like they're having a bad day, or if you actually see an instance of bullying, if you just go out of your way to interrupt it or to give a kid a seat at your lunch table or to say hi to somebody, it makes such a huge difference, and it could save somebody's life. I'm happy to say now we're joined by Gabrielle Glorioso. She's a school psychologist from Carroll County Schools. Welcome, Gabriella. Can you hear us? We were joined by her. I see her. This is one of the awkward things about having a forum like this. Gabrielle, can you hear us?
Yes, but it sounds like you guys have muted me, it looks like.
Oh, did you mute her? We hope we didn't mute you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We can't see you very well, but that's okay.
Okay, yeah, I apologize for that.
Could you introduce yourself to our forum?
Sure, my name's Gabrielle Glorioso, and I'm a school psychologist for Carroll County Public Schools. I've also worked with Baltimore City Schools, and I am currently on the executive board for the Carroll County chapter of GLSEN, which is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educators Network. And yes, thank you for having me here. I'm kind of joining late, so I don't know where you are in the process.
Well, basically, what can you tell us with your experience as a school psychologist, your experiences with bullying in the schools, and what you think could help as far as training teachers and or talking to the kids? I mean, you're a guidance counselor?
No, I'm a school psychologist, okay. But I work with a lot of amazing guidance counselors, school counselors. And I will tell you that I feel like the schools are really up to an incredible challenge with bullying today. It's much different than it was years ago, and it's getting increasingly more dangerous and prevalent. However, I think they're doing a great job. We have in Carroll County and across Maryland the PBIS program, and I'm not sure if you guys already talked about that yet.
Not yet.
Yes, and there's a link, PBIS Maryland. .org is a great resource for schools, and it is in all of Carroll County elementary schools. It's in many of the middle schools and several of the high schools. And what that does is really teach kids, because really bullying, you really need to address that early on and teach kids early on about respect, responsibility, etc. And the schools do a great job teaching the kids, getting them to buy into this philosophy of watching their words and how they treat people. And so, in fact, one of my elementary schools that I work at, after they have the Pledge of Allegiance, the kids actually say a pledge to not bully anyone that day and to use kind words. So it's that dialogue is drilled into their heads and repeated, and that cannot happen enough. As they go on to the higher level schools, I'm losing the. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. The PBIS works in different ways as far as getting them to buy into the program, and they have pep rallies, and the kids just really get excited about doing good deeds and helping others and complimenting others. So it's a really incredible program. So I would recommend that parents actually try to go on that website, look for resources. Also, the State of Maryland website, Department of Ed, has a great resource for parents as well. My one advice for parents would be to utilize your schools for resources. If your school has a PBIS program, to try to mimic that at home, using some of the reward systems, some of the reinforcers to help reinforce that for their children, and also to use. I have parents that actually tell me that they take parenting classes because they feel like they don't have the resources available and the tools to do a good job. And so we need parents' help as much as possible because, like I said, the schools are up against incredible challenges today. And so if parents can help out, all for the better.
Thank you so much for mentioning PBIS, Positive Behavioral Intervention System. It's something that Maryland has been very involved with since 1999. We have trained well over half of the schools in the state on how to implement the program, and it really is to take a positive approach to behavior for students. I also want to mention that we have had in October our third annual conference on bullying. This time we joined Johns Hopkins and Shepherd Pratt and other organizations around the state to have a conference that looked at using bullying data for decision making, bullying from a federal perspective, issues pertaining to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender students, and community collaboration to address bullying. I also want to point out that Maryland is one of 13 states to have a Safe and Supportive Schools grant, which is an experimental grant looking at how behavior can be changed through different interventions at our high school level. We're really looking forward to being in our second year of that grant, and we're really looking forward to the results and how we might be able to use that to train all of our schools in the state. But thank you for mentioning PBIS.
Yes, and again, thank you for joining us. Well, I guess at this point we're going to wrap it up. Unless there are any of other guests that want to add anything after listening to Gabrielle discuss that program that's being implemented, if anybody has any thoughts that they'd like to share with us.
I'm just thrilled to see all of the focus on the positive and how we can make it better, how instead of focusing on what not to do, the what to do. It's just so helpful and I think so refreshing in this field.
Well, it really has been wonderful having everybody join us here this evening to discuss this issue. It's, although, like we said in the beginning, Maryland is pretty progressive in this area, there's still way too many sad stories that I hear constantly. And I have spoken to parents, I've had them at my home who have lost their children to bullying, children that have committed suicides in a very violent way. So I am committed to really trying to do everything we possibly can through the schools, through the parents, through the community, and change this culture. That's really the problem. And again, with, this whole issue of cyberbullying, it's taken into a whole new realm. But I'm just so grateful that we have great experts here this evening. Rosalind, as you know, is the author of Queen Bee Wannabes, and I know she's working on another book dealing with Queen Bee Wannabes is about the girls and how their whole dynamic is in this area. And now she's working on a book involving boys, which is probably going to be completely different. So I'm really anticipating that coming out. So thank you, Rosalind. And again, all of you for your heartfelt efforts in helping us save our kids, because that's really what it's about. Thanks again.
Thank you.